was a lovely weekend. At least it was here. All right. If you check your to-do list, there is a introductory activity for you to do. So I'd like a reflection. I know one person has done it already, and I asked you about it. Actually assigned it for you last week, and I told you you wouldn't have to write it down until today. So it is, let me just make sure that it actually is sitting on your homepage. All right, it says biodiversity reflection. So I asked you to maybe sit in your backyard or sit in the park or um, just spend some time out in nature this weekend and reflect on, and let me share the question. So it is on your to-do list, but I did ask you last week to ahead of time to think about it. I just didn't put the Dropbox up for it. And if you haven't done it, imagine that you're sitting in your yard in the park or something and think about what you might see. It says observe your community. What kind of biodiversity exists in it? List four fauna, and that's animals, and four flora. So take a few minutes while we're waiting for everybody to come in to answer that question. Everybody, if you logged in, you need to answer the questions. That's what you're doing right now. Right now. And then we're going to move on to talk about um, foundation and uh, keystone species or different types of species. All right, and thank you, Alyssa. I loved your choices. And I love that you were just ready to get it submitted as soon as you got in. All right, good morning, good morning, good morning. If you just came in, there is a 10-minute reflection, 10 minutes, 10-minute reflection that I want you to work on. Last week, I asked you to observe your community. If you weren't here last week, then you might need to just kind of meditate on this for a minute. Your community, meaning maybe you're just your backyard, your street you live on, the park you live nearby, and what kind of we left off talking about biodiversity, which is differences in different populations that live in a community. Our definition of community is different populations living in the same area. We're still not talking about the stream and the water, the ground, the sun. We're just talking about the living things that exist in one area. So I wanted you to observe your area. Think of four animals that might be running around in your um, backyard, on your street, birds that might be flying by. And I'm going to have you doing this a lot to just because this is an environmental science course. I want you to be aware of your environment. So I'm going to, from time to time, ask you to do things related to your particular environment, like we did last week. Um, some of you still had a little difficulty with the habitat and niche question, but we'll get you there. All right, so 10 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm going to stop talking. I think almost everybody has logged in. Um, almost. So if you just came in on your to-do, on your homepage, There is a 10-minute reflection. Reflection means it's not going to take all day. 10 minutes, 10 minutes. Biodiversity reflection. Okay, please work on that for the next 10 minutes. Okay, Jayla, I'll do that. Okay. No, you weren't. And you weren't the only one. And let me say this too, in regard to that. Several of you might have gotten half points on your habitat study because all you did was define the terms. And that's why I gave you credit for the definition, but that wasn't the assignment. The assignment, and let me pull that assignment up because while I have the page here. Da, 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 da. Oh, can't see what the assignment said, can you? Because it's late. All right, let me do it from my point of view. I don't want submission details. I want the assignment. Okay, I don't have it up on my page anymore. So let me come over here. That usually means it's late. Why is that? And sometimes, folks, there are things that have checks on them. Because I noticed you all had access to another side. All right. So the question said, describe your place in your place. And maybe I should have highlighted that word, made it bold. Your place in your community. Okay. Using the following terms. So you were supposed to do a description of the habitat where you live, because that's the habitat. And then you were supposed to understand the term niche. So this was about understanding how to use the word niche, fundamental niche, realized niche, and competition. I really enjoyed what some of you all said because you were in competition with your brothers and sisters for certain things. And then there were some of you who had no competition because you're an only child. And I like that you reflected on that too, because that's important. People who have no competition, they got everything on, there's nothing holding them back. Okay, so in the community, that's important to know. Do you have any competition? What resources are available to you that you have more of because there is no competition? So that's how you were supposed to answer that question. Again, I should have highlighted your place in your community. So if you got 4 out of 8, that's why. Because you merely defined the terms habitat, fundamental niche, realized niche, and interspecific species, and that was not the assignment. Okay, you got to read these questions carefully. Carefully answer what is asked. All right, I'm going to stop talking for the next 5 minutes. let you do what you need to do. Also turn in any other, Wednesday, we're going to do a gallery walk um, with your projects. So hopefully all projects will be in by then. I'll have them graded by then. And I'll explain what the gallery walk is all about. And so everybody should be working on their reflection question. And even if you didn't sit out over the weekend and answer the question, close your eyes and imagine that you are. And think of what animals are running around, which plants are in your neighborhood. Fauna is animal, flora is plant. That's the one. All right, if you finish your reflection, then please look at your Canvas module on community. And again, we're going to be looking at the, go scroll down to where it starts with foundation species and keystone species. Mm-hmm. Also, if you rewrite your My Habitat, you need to let me know. Otherwise, it's not going to show that you resubmitted. Okay. All right, so we're going to go on. So if you didn't finish your reflection, make sure that that's something that you reflect on this evening and get that submitted. All right, also remember that I have tutorial time on Tuesdays and Fridays from 1:30 to 2, so you can pop into the Zoom and get some assistance on pulling up grades because we are getting to the end of the term, the end of the first 9 weeks. There is a 9-week exam, and your exam for third period is Thursday, October 1st. So keep that in mind. And you do want to make sure, because report cards go out after that, so you do want to make sure that you get everything caught up. So you might want to meet with me because things might need to be reopened so that you can get caught up on all the things that you need to get caught up on. I reopen them, they're still late, but I reopen them. So the grade is better than a 0. Always, always, always. All right. So we are, let me start with Canvas. Let's start there. So go to go to Canvas, go to Community, Module. And if you scroll down halfway through that module, because we've already talked about defined biodiversity, and our And then just a reminder that we are looking at the levels of organization. We only have one more topic in this unit, so we'll be finished with this unit before the end of the 9 weeks. This will be our last unit for the 9 weeks. Okay. All right, so again, we looked at biodiversity, and biodiversity looks at the variety of living organisms and genetic differences among them and the community in which they occur. Okay, so biodiversity is all about differences. Okay, so that's what we were looking at before. Now, in the activity, the gizmo that you looked at the effect of several organisms in a community, and they asked you specifically to define keystone species. So we're going to look at what is a keystone species and what are foundation species and invasive species. So there's 4 vocabulary words we're going to look at.
Once again, a very big hi to one and all. First of all, I'd like to thank you for checking into this video. And in this video presentation, I will like to briefly share with you the meaning of the following terminology often used in ecology and environmental science paper, particularly under the topic of biodiversity and conservation. These had also been frequently asked in quite a few number of competitive exams, including UGC NET exams. And for better and easy understanding, examples will be used to explain the difference between these species types. And to begin with, let's first see what is a keystone species. And to understand what is a keystone species, let's take an example of a grassland ecosystem. In a grassland ecosystem, the autotrophs or the primary producer, they occupy the base of the trophic level, and which is then followed by the primary consumer or the herbivore, which are the deer, and which are also then followed by secondary consumer or the carnivores, which are the gravores. Okay, so now all these 3 organisms are interdependent to one another for their existence and survival. Now imagine one of the species is being eliminated or removed due to certain environmental factors or human-induced factors. For example, let's say gravose population in the grassland ecosystem has declined or has become extinct. Now the whole ecosystem will be in a problem. First, since there is no predator, then the deer population will explode. Okay, and as a result, this will put a tremendous pressure on the autotrophs or the primary producer. And time will come that a vegetation community can.
All right, so I'm just going to pause it for a minute. All right. So what he just said was, right now we're looking at this and there's a balance. Okay. If there's no wolf to eat the deer, then the deer population is unchecked. Okay. There's nothing to stop them from growing. Normally in the balance, you have the wolves killing the deer, but then the deer are still reproducing and there's a balance. But then if there's nothing to kill off the deer, then the deer are not going to die. They're just going to reproduce and reproduce, and then they'll, like he said, explode.
No longer be able to regenerate themselves, and this will subsequently lead to the lack of food in the ecosystem, and as a result will lead to the extinction of the other species which are found in the ecosystem. So therefore uh, a keystone species is a species which played an important role in maintaining the structure and function of an habitat or an ecosystem, without which the ecosystem will collapse. Okay. So now I hope you understand what is a keystone species. To make it simpler, let me take another example. If you take an example of a pond ecosystem, you'll have the primary producer, which are the phytoplanktons, the primary consumers, which are the zooplanktons, and the secondary, and so on and so forth. Okay. So now what happened now, even in the pond ecosystem, let's say something happened, and then what happened, the entire phytoplankton is being removed from that pond, or the population decreased drastically or due to some unknown reason. So what will happen to the trophic? What will happen to the food chain? Now, if there's no phytoplankton, obviously there will be no zooplankton. If there's no zooplankton, there will be no fish, isn't it? So as a result, the entire ecosystem will collapse. So therefore, these species, which plays a significant role in maintaining the structure and function of an ecosystem, such species are known as the keystone species. Okay.
Downy gives your sheets a delicate, fresh scent that breathes life into your laundry.
Progressive's Up Payment program provides down payment assistance for first-generation home buyers.
It's like watching TV.
Now let's see what is the flagship species.
Yeah,
See,
hold on.
okay. In any particular protected area
Before he
species.
did that,
Okay.
he had a host there.
Now let's see what is the flagship species. See,
it just skips right over that summary
now
page.
let's see what is the flagship species.
All right, let me see if I can get this to stop where I needed to stop. There. All right. So, okay. So keystone species, it maintains the structure and functioning and productivity of a habitat. Okay. An organism that holds a habitat or an ecosystem together, which results in the survival or existence of others. In other words, it keeps balance. It keeps a balance. Their removal, and this is the important part, their removal or disappearance will result in the collapse of the entire habitat or ecosystem, which consequently leads to the extinction of the species. Okay. Another example, and phytoplankton. So if he had a grassland ecosystem. So now the example that they're giving you now is a water ecosystem. If there were no phytoplankton, which is the food that many fish feed on, and those are microscopic little organisms, microscopic plants to be specific. If they disappeared, the fish would starve because they have no other choice of food substance. So we're looking at extinction of two of the ecosystem in particular, not just the organisms. The whole ecosystem could collapse because of the keystone species being removed.
Now let's see what is the flagship species. See, there are many species, especially those animal species which are in the wild. They are under constant threat of extinction. Okay. So in order to create awareness about the importance and for protecting and conserving these species in any particular protected area or over a large geographical area or even around the world, what happened? Some species are used or are represented as an ambassador or as an icon or as a symbol for different organizations, for different events, or for different environmental campaign. Okay, so by using these species as an ambassador, as an icon, as a symbol, what happened now? These species gets the attention of the people of the world or the leaders of the world, and as a result, the species are protected and conserved. Okay, so a few examples for this is, like for example, is which are animal species who act as a flagship species are, for example, the giant panda, which is used as an icon for WWF icon. And even which in 2016 South Asian Game, a mascot of one horned rhino is being used. Okay, and for example, protection of December, we have a Bengal tiger. Okay, which is used as a flagship species. Even in 2014, the armadillo mascot is used, isn't it? So what happened now? These species are used as a flagship species So basically, because they need to be protected, because because their population in the wild is decreasing drastically. That's why they need to be protected and conserved. Okay, so therefore, flagship species are sometimes also known as the charismatic species. Okay. Now let's see to the
Okay,
next
he
part,
always
which
goes
is
through
the
that so quickly.
foundation
Oh,
species. Now, what are foundation
all right,
species? Now let's see
hold on.
to the next part.
Let me see if I can't stop him. There we go. All right, so again, in reflection, it is a species that is selected to act as an ambassador icon defined for the habitat because the environment has an issue. So if people bring attention to that species, then people tend to care about that environment. You might not care about the little plant that's going extinct, but if you like that tiger, he's attractive. You like that big panda, everybody loves a panda. Everybody wants to save the pandas. The elephants are also, I used to do fundraisers when I was in the school system for the Wildlife Foundation. So we adopted an organism. So I have several. My whole shelf is filled with all kind of little stuffed animals for supporting one or two of these individuals. But as a class, we supported an elephant one year. And it just draws people's attention to that organism. But the funds and attention that you give to it also go to saving the environment. And it's kind of like a draw to get your attention. Okay, so that's where a flagship one, which is different to being a keystone, which he's about to talk about now.
Now let's see to the next part, which is the foundation species. Now, what are foundation species? To understand what is a foundation species, if you have come, I think if you have studied in ecology, you have come across the term succession. Okay, and you will have come across the different stage of succession. And there is something which is known as the pioneer species or the climax species. So foundation species are somewhat like that of the pioneer species. Okay, so what are these foundation species? Foundation species are those species which plays an important role in constructing or designing or redesigning any particular ecosystem or habitat, thus making that habitat more habitable for other organisms to live. So such species are called as a foundation species. To make this a little bit easy, let's take an example. For example, corals of coral reefs. So now what happened? Now these corals, okay, they are the invertebrate animals. What they do is they use or they extract the calcium carbonate which is there in this seawater. Okay, so when they extract this, they develop a hard structure on the seabed, like for something like this. Then this hard structure now actually act as a framework or as a foundation for other life form to form, in which the coral reef is formed. Okay, so therefore corals are actually the foundation species in the coral reefs. Another example of foundation species are the kelp forests. These are not inland forests; they're actually underwater forests. Okay, they are formed actually by the extensive growth of algae along the coastal area. Okay, as these algae grow and multiply, what happened? They act as a shelter for shelters and also provide food for different types of aquatic organisms, which are aquatic organisms found in a marine ecosystem. Okay, so therefore these species are therefore known as the foundation species because they act as an engineer of an ecosystem. Okay.
My work is easy.
Now I have to go back. All right, I have to let the commercial go for me.
Because I use ClickUp. Here's how I keep track of all my tasks. I start by brain dumping everything I need to get done.
Now last are species because they act as an engineer of an ecosystem.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So again, they engineer. So the species that kind of starts the And when we do all food chains and food webs, we always start with the producers. So that is the beginning or the foundation of any ecosystem. So we need to first look at where is our energy starting and what is, because as he said, that species also provides shelter, it provides food. So it is important for the beginning of that ecosystem. All right, let's see if I can get it to skip over the commercial. There. Okay, we're going to start right there.
Species are those species which are not indigenous to any particular region or an area. Actually, they have been just transported or been transferred into a new habitat, either accidentally or maybe intentionally or accidentally. However, when these species reach into this area, into this particular new habitat, they start growing and multiplying profusely. And what do? They start overtaking the native species which are present, native species. And what do? They start altering this species composition of an area. And as a result, they start removing or destroying the native species of plant and animal found in that particular area. Okay. So, for example, the best example for invasive species is Lantana camara and Parthenium hysterophorus. Okay. For example, with Lantana camara, the situation happened is like in the Nilgiri hills. In Nilgiri, what happened now? The Asiatic elephant have a static shortage supply of food because of the because the invasion of this Lantana camara over the native shrubs which in which these elephants feed on. Okay, so this has been creating a lot of problem. So therefore, these species, invasive species, are also sometimes known as the exotic species or the alien species. Okay, so these are the reference for the discussion
Right.
on which these are.
Okay, let me get this back to right. All right, so I want you to write down this definition of invasive species because we have one in Georgia, and I want you to do a little research on that and tell me about this. And you might be familiar with it because it's all over the place. It's called kudzu. So I'm going to open a folder, but you need to know some background information on kudzu. That is our local invasive species. So let us come back here. All right. And it's not in your folder yet because I'm just creating it. I had it for last year, but it didn't show up. I'm going to call it Georgia invasive species. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Where's the part? Oh, there we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay. That way you can submit It's available today. And let's say it's going to be, I don't want to leave them open too long, so I'm going to leave it open till Friday. Next week we have exams, so we don't want to leave it open past Wednesday. Save and publish. All right. Now you're going to have to refresh your page to see this because it's not, because I just put it in, it's not going to show up right away. But it will. All right, so you're going to do a little research. Do a little research. Kudzu, what is it? Give it scientific name. You can even have a picture. That would be nice. Where did it come from? Why did we bring it here? And why is it called an invasive species? What is it doing now? Okay, those are the questions you need to answer for that. So let's spend the rest of this time doing that. If you complete that, which you probably will not, then you need to come back to community and, well, it's, first of all, you should read all of those and then look at these things about keystone species and community. And then we're going to do a quick look at this on next class. Okay, so everybody right now is working on, and it's not in the module, it's on your to-do list. So like I said, you might have to refresh. It'll say Georgia invasive species. And our invasive species is the kudzu. What is it? Where is it from? Why do we bring it here? And what went wrong? You might even have some in your neighborhood. All right, so that's what everybody should be working on right now. Again, you may have to refresh your page so that this shows up on your to-do list. And this won't take long. So you should be able to, because if you're doing it right now, and then I'd strongly encourage that you all get in the habit of doing what is assigned to you when it's assigned to you, and you won't start falling behind. I see 5 of you working on it. Like I said, you can include a picture. Isabella, I like your picture. I think I have it right now. You have to answer those 4 questions. So that's 4 sentences. 2 points, 2 points a sentence if you want to look at it that way. So when I ask how many sentences do we need, you need to answer the question. What is it? Where did it come from? What is its native? It's not native to here. Okay, so that's what makes it an invasive species. It is not native to Georgia. It came from somewhere. Where did it come from? Why did they bring it here? What was the point of bringing this organism to Georgia? And what has happened since they brought it to Georgia? Why is it called an invasive species? 4 answers. And a picture would be nice. And again, everybody should be working on this now. Looking at a bunch of screens. Y'all like to ask me, when am I going to grade it? Sometimes y'all take too long to do the assignment. And I'm going back and going back and going back. And if y'all would do, everybody would do it at the same time, it would grade faster. And folks, at this point, if you haven't done the gizmo, that's just a 0. And I've got 3 people who have not even started that gizmo. Oh, ask me about that. So, Sorry about that. Why did it do that? You turned in a worksheet. You did not, folks. When you were doing the activity for the ecosystem, there were questions that they were asking you as you went along, and it was keeping score. If you did not complete that activity, then the score is out of 91 points. And I got a handful of you who didn't finish. Gabrielle, Justin, Candace, Caroline, Sophia, Katie, Chance, Nathan, Evan. Y'all have not finished the activity. And I got 4 of you who had never even started. Okay, I don't like showing people. I'm gonna hide the names. There we go. All right, let me show you what I'm talking about. Yeah. All right. I took the names out, but you know who you are. All right. There's the blue things are questions that you did, written questions. I have to grade those before we get a final score. Okay. I got one person, 2 people who are finished. The rest of you, I have to either grade, so I have to do the final. And the last question is a lot of points, so you can't just skim through it. That's like 12 or 15 points to that question. So if you haven't gone through and finished answering them, so I'm going to tally these up today. And if it's not finished, I'm going to put in whatever totals. If it's 24 out of 91, that's going to be added to your worksheet, and that's what you get. So please go back and check your Gizmo. Like I said, this is also the week before report cards where I have to start calling home, telling your parents you're not doing what you're supposed to do, that you're logging in and I don't know what you're doing, but you're not doing what you're supposed to do. All right. I'll stop sharing for a minute. I just needed to show you what I was talking about. Right now I can do the names back and so I will do, and Leah, I'm going to do that right now. Oh, sorry. I thought I stopped sharing. So sorry. But it was going to be good. And then make sure you come back and get your work done. Like I said, there's like 1, 2, 3, 6. It's like half the class finished. All right, I just clicked on show scores to students. So you should be able to go in and see what your scores are. So like I said, some of you, I have to grade all those little blue areas, and I'm doing that now. But the other rest of you need to get it done. Why are they not showing? Okay. Okay, and if you know you finished it, that's fine. Hold on. Let me get back to that page. Like I said, if I called your name, it's not showing that you finished it. And Justin, it is not saying that you did. You're only halfway through. In fact, I'll tell you exactly where you are. No. Um, all right, again, folks, go in. If you're not sure whether you're finished or not, go in and look. I put it so that you can see the scores. The score is out of 91. So if you're not even close to, you might have it. See somebody who's answered all the questions except the ones I graded. So you might have halfway through. So if you got like 40 something, 50 something, then all right, this one, all right, like Max. Max has 52, and that's a good score. and I need to grade the rest. So, but it's out of 91. Okay, so if you're up if you're at least at 50, then you're in good shape. 50, 49 is good shape. Then when I add the rest to it, you'll be all right. But you should be able to see what I see. All right, here we go. What was I doing? All right, just a reminder, you go to Clever. You're going to go to Explore Learning. That's the orange decal or the orange app with EL on it. Once you click on EL, it should take you to the gizmo. You don't need a password. You just need to click in to the assignment to go to class. Might say you have no new activities. Just hit go to class and it will take you to the assignment. I had to watch how y'all do it because yours was different than mine. Again, everybody should check because some of you think you finished and you're not finished. And I'm going to put the score in as is because we've been on this too long. Like I got two people who are logged off, who logged in earlier for attendance and now they're gone. So they have no clue that they're not finished and I'm not rediscussing this. Most y'all are old enough to live with the consequences of your actions. All right, we got 2 minutes left to class. If you are one of the few wonderful folks who are all done and you've done your kudzu question, you are free to log out. If you're not finished your kudzu question, hang for a little while, like for 2 more minutes. And then I'll see you on Wednesday.